Here we are for our last discussion, our last lecture. Let me get the slideshow going correctly. Here we go. Yeah, finishing up today with looking at a little bit at the immune system, just a little bit of information, and mushrooms and echinacea. So a little word about this. Mushrooms, great help to the immune system. That's not all they do. They do more than just that, but boy, are they helpful for the immune system. They're also helpful for anything neurological. So if you, or at least the ones that we're going to talk about today, for sure. Lots of great help for neuro, lots of great help for immune system. Of course, we're not talking about the poisonous kinds of mushrooms because that won't be helpful for you at all. All right, echinacea. We hear a lot about it. There's a lot of information out there that is inaccurate. It's not a cure-all, and it's not worthless. It can be very, very helpful. It does more than just simply help the immune system, but we will focus on a lot of immune effects today. And you're reading also about echinacea, extremely helpful in understanding this very, very cool plant. I make a combination every year to kind of help my family through the cold and flu season. And it has in it echinacea. That's one of the parts. Echinacea and habanero and garlic and apple cider vinegar. And it's extremely, extremely useful in terms of helping us fight a cold or just simply not get sick. All right, mushrooms. So this is kind of an interesting history here because Hippocrates did find mushrooms to be very useful, but a lot of people after Hippocrates did not value them at all. They're really kind of different than herbs. They're in a whole different family. You know, there's like the plant kingdom, and mushrooms are not part of the plant kingdom. They're not even part of the plant kingdom. They're part of the fungi kingdom. And so they're fun guys, right? I couldn't help it. I tried not to. So since then, people became kind of, we call it mycophobic, when you're kind of phobic of mushrooms, and did not value or use or see the benefits. But now there's a tremendous interest in mushrooms, and the level of information out there is growing day by day. Lots of people are very into mushrooms, in part because of their neurological impact as ways of boosting your intellectual ability, your memory, your mood, etc. And then in part because of just the general effects. And then a lot of the research focuses on the anti-cancer benefits of mushrooms. So take care. The two mushrooms we're talking about today, reishi and lion's mane, are really quite easy to identify. They actually both grow around here in Virginia, so you could find them out in the woods, and they're really quite easy to identify. There's not a lot that looks similar to them, but still, I would definitely get someone to help you check them out to make sure that they are what you think they are. There's really nothing else that looks like lion's mane. I would love to find some lion's mane and some reishi, but I would say leave it to the experts. If you want to go out looking for mushrooms, take an expert with you, or just leave it to the experts. Mushrooms in general grow on what we call a mycelium substrate. And so if you think of how tomatoes grow in the soil, that's sort of the same thing as mushrooms growing on mycelium. So you have a tomato plant, and it has a stem, and from the stems you have tomatoes. And so you could say that tomatoes are the fruiting body of the tomato. Similarly, mushrooms are like the fruiting body of the mycelium. And so we think of mushrooms sort of like all by themselves. You know, they just kind of pop up in the grass or on a tree or something. We don't think of them as connected to the whole world, but in a sense, they really are connected. Mushrooms grow on this mycelial network that is all throughout under the ground. There are mycelial networks that are huge. There's one they know of that is one mycelial body that covers 2,400 acres of land. So You can have very, very large mycelial networks. You can have much smaller ones. The mycelium is that kind of fibrous, filamentous, whitish stuff. You can find it under logs. It's throughout the soil. When you hoe your soil, when you break it up and or rototiller it, you're breaking up that mycelial network. And some of the more recent, what do you call it? Recent advice on gardening strongly suggests that you don't break up that network because it's so necessary, so needful. And instead, you do more surface planting and allow the plant roots to grow into that mycelial network and let the mycelium remain intact. So mycelium does a tremendous number of things. It is really amazing. Once you kind of grasp this idea that there's this huge network beneath the earth that we don't really think about, it won't leave your mind. It will just be amazing. It's yet one more piece of the puzzle in which we all work together. The earth, animals, plants, mushrooms, mycelium, it's all a part of the same plan. So mycelium is a great decomposer. People know of mushrooms as part of decomposition, helps decompose any organic matter, but it also helps to retain water in the soil. So water retention, it helps disperse carbon into the atmosphere. It helps improve the nutrient efficiency of plants because it will bring nutrients to the plant roots that the plant roots wouldn't already automatically get, so particularly minerals. Bring minerals to plant roots. So the mushroom or the mycelium and plants have this kind of mutually beneficial relationship. So you have the plant roots going into the soil and they bring the products of the sun to the mycelium. This mycelium doesn't access the sun, and so the plant is bringing chlorophyll, bringing product of growth by the sun to mycelium. Mycelium gathers nutrients and then brings it to the plant, like minerals, etc. And there are some amazing discoveries of mycelial networks nourishing the weakest plants in that area. So focusing their efforts on helping nourish the weakest plants and not just shuffling everything to the same place. Sort of like knowing which plants need their help the most and then working on those plants in that area. There are a number of stories that are just so interesting and amazing about what the mycelium kind of quote unquote knows or can sense in an environment. So eliminating pathogens, filtering toxins. People are looking at using mycelial networks actually to detoxify wastewater, to detoxify land masses. It feeds worms that bind soil together. It communicates. It's really astonishing. And so as the fruiting body, mushrooms are kind of represent the fruit, or you could say the one of the end products perhaps of the mycelial network. And so there's a tremendous amount of value in many, many, many mushrooms. There are a lot of medicinal mushrooms that people are beginning to appreciate more and more and more. So all mushrooms, not just medicinal mushrooms, even the ones that you just buy in the store that you use to make whatever you make, button mushrooms or baby bellas, whatever it is. They're high in protein, they're high in fiber, high in B vitamins, high in minerals, and they are high in what's called beta-glucan. Beta-glucans are a kind of polysaccharide. And beta-glucans are amazing. They are immunomodulators. They're one of the things that are checked out in using mushrooms for cancer. And so with immunomodulators, of course, as a reminder, similar to what we talked about with adaptogens, we're not talking about boosting the immune system. We're not talking about overactivating the immune system. We're talking about modulating the immune system. So what modulation means is we're stimulating release of immune cells, but not overactive release. And so if you look at the last page of today's reading, I copied this other page that talks a little bit about autoimmune disease. And sometimes people worry that with autoimmune disease, if they take any sort of herb that has an impact on the immune system, then that means that will boost their immune system and throw it out of balance. And I would just be cautious about that assumption, because then, again, what you're doing is you're making assumptions that plants work the same as drugs, and they don't. They're far, far, far more complex. So what these beta-glucans do is they help stimulate the release of immune cells. They improve immune system communication. They work against antibiotic-resistant bacteria, which is pretty great, because when it's antibiotic resistant, it means that your options are limited, and mushrooms may be very helpful in that way. Mushrooms also improve blood lipids, which can create a really nice cardiovascular impact. They lower blood glucose. They improve your insulin sensitivity. They improve the nervous system in general, both in terms of your nerve health and in terms of like down the road from your nerve health, which would be your cognition, attention, memory, focus, that sort of thing, your mental health, your mood, and like I said, very much studied for anti-cancer benefits. The immune system in general, it's useful for you to know this, because this is not true just for any sort of immunomodulating herb like mushrooms, but also along with echinacea, another thing, or there are a number of other herbs that are used to really help the immune system. The immune system responds better in general to like a periodic wave of stimulation, not a constant use. And so if you're taking any sort of herb that you know helps the immune system, it's better to take a week off every month with that herb instead of just taking it constantly. Sometimes it's tempting to just take it all the time, but if you take a week off every month, that will help maximize the herb's immune benefits, so your body is not just getting a constant influence from that herb. Here, again, I want to focus on really emphasizing the usefulness of using herbs for your immune system and herbs to help fight infection as compared to antibiotics. Antibiotics can be extremely useful when they're needed in their area. And so if you really, really need an antibiotic, pharmaceutical, sometimes that can be a tremendous blessing. However, they will always adversely affect your gut health. They will always adversely affect your gut biome, because they kill everything indiscriminately. Sometimes you get to the place to where you really need that, but a lot of times you can take care of infection with really useful and quite powerful herbal substitutes for antibiotics, antiviral, antifungal kind of medication. And that will help preserve your gut biome, which we know is between 70 and 90% of your immune system. A lot of people put it closer to 80, 85, 90% of your immune system. I've only seen a couple places where people estimate that it's as low as 70%. And so the microbiome, your gut biome, your probiotic population is extraordinarily necessary, critical to the performance of your immune system. So you want to protect that really carefully. Be very, very careful about what gets in the way of your gut biome. And herbs are much more friendly there because they're not indiscriminate killers like antibiotics. Sometimes you need an antibiotic, but a lot of times you can take care of your body in a more helpful way. All right, let's look at this gorgeous mushroom here. Isn't this just spectacular? Just amazing. I've never seen lion's mane in the wild. I would like to. That's one of my goals. But I would love to just walk along a path somewhere in the woods and run into this amazing thing. Lion's mane is actually said to taste a little bit like scallops. And so I'm thinking lion's mane and some butter, a little bit scallopy. That sounds great to me. Lion's mane improves cognitive impairment. A number of studies showing this. It increases something called NGF, or nerve growth factor. And nerve growth factor is useful because it improves your nerve cell survival in the brain, reduces the plaque that is linked to Alzheimer's, improves communication in the nerves. Lion's mane can reduce depression. It, in addition to nerve growth factor, it also regulates and enhances production of what's called brain-derived neurotrophic factor, or BDNF. Brain-derived neurotrophic factor helps new brain cells survive, thrive. It's sort of like the Miracle Grow that you put on the new brain cells to make sure that they grow up and are really thriving. So everyone wants more BDNF. Another way to get BDNF, by the way, is to exercise. Exercise will give you BDNF. Lion's mane helps myelinate nerves. If you remember the way the nerves communicate, some nerves, many nerves communicate along a myelin shaft, and the myelin will help speed up that nerve signal. And sometimes nerves will travel the myelinated shaft, and sometimes they will travel a shaft that's not myelinated, depending on the kind of nerve and neurotransmitter. But lion's mane can help myelinate nerves, and particularly help remyelinate damaged nerves that have had their myelin damaged and then need to remyelinate. So that's awesome. Helps with some of the cognitive benefits. Reduces neuropathic pain, which handy, useful, right? And it can help with Crohn's disease, which is a gut disease but has a lot to do with nerves. And here's a picture of reishi, also a gorgeous mushroom, just beautiful, very, very well known in Asia, more so than here, like most things, more so than here in North America. Reishi is actually considered a little bit to be an adaptogenic mushroom. So there's that to think about. It used to be literally worth its weight in gold. Now we grow reishi, not just in the wild. There's all kinds of production facilities that grow reishi domestically, or they grow it in sawdust, that sort of thing. Reishi is known to increase the proliferation of immune cells, so there's more available to do what you need. All kinds of cells, natural killer cells, cytokines, etc. Increases proliferation of those immune cells, and it protects acetylcholine, which is one of your main neurotransmitters. Protects acetylcholine from breaking down, so it gets in the way of an enzyme that tends to break down acetylcholine. So then you have more acetylcholine left to do things with. Of course, it's not going to make you out of balance, right? Reishi will protect your liver. It can heal gastric ulcers. Yeah, those are actually ulcers. Only, I guess, on Thursday, June 25th, they are ulcers. Just FYI, today, all day, ulcers. But usually they are gastric ulcers, and those are improved either way by reishi. And it can improve fibromyalgia. So a mushroom that has a tremendous number of uses. So then let's just move on to echinacea, the last herb that we're going to talk about. Echinacea, really helpful for colds. Like I said, I have it in a little combination that I use here. The combination is not my development. Another herbalist developed it, and I use it. I make it and I use it. It can decrease the odds of developing a cold by 58% in one study. Can reduce the duration of the cold. I know there was this day when I was complaining to someone else about how I had a cold. I said, I've had this cold. It was an awful cold. I had it for like a whole 2 days. And I remember she looked at me really funny. And that's when I realized again, I thought, oh, okay, that's right. Because I take this stuff that makes it so a 2-day cold really does seem extreme to me. I'm used to I'm used to it being gone in 1 day or so. But a full 2 days just seems a little extreme to me. And she gave me the funniest look. And then I gave her some of my tincture, and I told her where to buy it or how to make it, both. And she said she's used it ever since. It's been many, many years, and they've enjoyed far fewer colds also. So the combination I use is called iCharge, and I-charge. And I think I found it online when I searched something about pink eye. So maybe if you search pink eye and iCharge, you'll run across that little recipe. Or you can contact me and I can tell you how to make it. Okay, do you remember the eclectic practitioners back when we talked about history? And this was in America. It was one of the movements that happened not too far before sort of the end of American herbalism and the taking over by the American Medical Association. So the eclectic practitioners, those were the ones who said, we'll just use whatever is out there as long as it works. That's our thing. We're not sticking to one person or one theory. We're saying whatever works, let's use it. And so that's what the eclectics were. The eclectics loved echinacea. It used to be used by indigenous Americans for hundreds and hundreds of years. And they used it for all kinds of things. So eclectic practitioners found out through indigenous Americans and used it for everything from snake bites to nerve pain. Echinacea can help with bronchitis. Echinacea is kind of a broad spectrum herb that can be used for all kinds of things, not just colds. One of its components is echinacoside. I said that today, echinacoside, as opposed to that other thing that was funny. Okay, component, it's one of the components. This particular component, of course, as we know, it acts in the whole plant. Echinacea contains this antibiotic component. It doesn't mean that echinacea will act the same as just this component. So they're not independent, they work together. However, this component has been shown to attack a huge range: viruses, bacteria, fungi, protozoa. And so it's a great thing to have for wound healing, for infection, and it will work to its maximum and most useful ability in the context of using the whole plant. And so for more information, there's a ton of great information I gave you in today's reading by Paul Bergner on echinacea, some really useful information about clinical research on echinacea. So remembering our theme here for the term or for this class, which in some parts is how do we understand these plants using the scientific method. And so that chapter I think will be really useful for you and a nice one to finish up with. So here are the final notes, class, the final things that I want to say, just to sum up. Nutrition and herbs have a huge, just a vast impact on mental health. So this semester we looked at the psychology, the psychological impact of nutrition and medicinal herbs. There are lots of things to understand beyond psychology. And what we do understand is that the mind-body connection is absolutely pervasive. There's no way to separate the two. And so an herb that helps your body feel better will create a better brain. You know, if your herb is helping your gut, then your gut can absorb more nutrition, which will then help your brain. If your herb is helping with pain, then you might be less tired and less depressed, which helps your brain function, well, helps your mood, etc. And so this whole mind-body connection, you can't take out the body and only study the mind, and you can't take out the mind and only study the body, because they work together so pervasively. And so nutrition and herbs have a tremendous impact on your mood, cognition, things like attention, memory, focus, things like brain health, your physiological brain health, your mental brain health, neuroprotective effects. Nutrition and herbs are tremendous for you, and they are a way for you to improve your health in a more targeted and less expensive and less dangerous way than trying to clean up after the problems with pharmaceuticals later. Medicinal herbs, as you are now understanding, are so much more complex and useful than most people suspect. You, at the end of this class, have a beginning understanding of that complexity, and your understanding is probably much more than most people's, and it's really just a beginning understanding. Part of what you understand is that you can't understand herbs and use herbs like you understand and use pharmaceuticals. It's really a whole different universe. And trying to apply your understanding of pharmaceuticals to herbs is just going to create problems, because you won't be able to see what you're doing, particularly when you're trying to do some sort of research or use science to understand them better. And so that end idea is that the scientific evidence is not what we understand it to be. What good science is that it looks beyond what's in the literature. Good science, good scientists will look at what's in the literature, but not be limited to what is in the literature. So here's my hope for the future for you. I hope you keep learning. I hope you keep asking questions. I hope you keep an open mind. I hope you become more healthy every day. I hope to see you in future classes. What I mean really is my future classes, but future classes in general, sure, that too. And I really look forward to reading your final comments in the last discussion, which is due next Tuesday, but open now. So thank you so much, and best wishes to you, and have a wonderful remaining summer.